What's good? What's good? Express lane, the Sci-Fi Express lane is coming for you. I'm about to switch my blinker and my indicator and run this stop sign and go into the Sci-Fi Express lane. Oh my goodness. This just gives me an opportunity to run my mouth. That's really all it is, folks. I'm a science fiction writer, filmmaker, comic book creator with a lot of opinions, on different things. So the more you do it, the more you persistence, right? They say persistence overcomes resistance. So I'm really staying in the lanes, holding down, and while things don't necessarily change specifically, the landscape changes, right? So I always go to the comic book store. I go to the bookstore on a regular. I used to go to the video store, but they don't have those anymore. Just to keep my eye on what's going on commercially, right? I talk to my peers so I know what they're doing artistically and what they're creating, but I go to book fairs, comic book conventions, and film festivals, right? Just to kind of keep my ear to the streets, right? So a couple of things happened yesterday at the comic book store, because that's kind of really where things are popping right now. I mean, bookstores have rebounded, and they brought back since the impact of ebooks, but it's sort of neutralized now. Bookstores have to sell the big volume books, and not too many of these small bookstores breaking indie books like they used to, right? Because I remember, man, I used to go to a used bookstore, not a used bookstore, an indie bookstore and used bookstores, right? Because indie bookstores still had, I guess, older books in there, like my spot on 125th Street. Man, I was dying to get one of my books up in there, and I just kind of started writing towards the end of their book store. They started closing up around 2011, 2012, and man, I really wanted to get in there, but there were a bunch of black bookstores and indie bookstores that were really thriving. Now, a lot of those indie bookstores sell the same stuff that you see in Barnes and Nobles, that you see in Books A Million, and I don't even know if we call Second and Charles a major bookstore. They're an indie bookstore chain, but maybe we can put them in there. But they definitely operate independently, and I like them a lot better than the Barnes and Nobles and the the Books A Million. But there used to be a lot of these stores, and they used to have a big difference in the selection. Now it's you find some black bookstores; those are the only ones. Nubian bookstores, Mudu bookstores. In Atlanta, you got Source of Knowledge in Newark, New Jersey, probably holding the whole state of New Jersey down. Human moved to Uptown Washington Heights. I think they got Sisters, but I don't know if they still open, and then we starving down here in Florida, you know what I'm saying? Source of Knowledge got a sister bookstore down here, but that's a tight one, so we struggling. S1 Books in LA, but a lot of those bookstores, they do black books well, but in terms of all of the independents, the black bookstores is about the only ones, that's doing it. We got a bookstore in Miami called Books and Books, and a lot of their stuff is pretty much what was in Barnes and Nobles or what's in Barnes and Nobles now. So the indie zone is tight. Now, comic book stores actually increased their indie selection. There were comic book stores, it was like, nah. There's still some now. They'd be like, nah, we don't have the shelf space for indies. You do anything for local indies? Nah, we don't do that. But now since the quarantine, they've realized that indies have stepped up their game, right? And there's a lot more indie comics. And so, and then with Kickstarter, mainstream publishers are going to indie, to Kickstarter, to crowdfunding, and they're getting projects funded faster, and they can put out the volume faster, and they can keep up with the monthly subscriptions, and so once the mainstream publishers started using crowdfunding, particularly Kickstarter, then it legitimatized the indie guys, right? So I just finished my 5th Kickstarter. Getting ready for Planet Kibulan Book 2 in March, early April, right? Late March, early April. So I've been getting, I got Twaman in stores. I got Fingernails big time with the stores. And so now I'm looking to get Planet Kibulan in stores. And that is amazing that they're open for that. I even got publishers interested in Cyberpunk Streets. So Kickstarter is really turning things around. Now also, change comes with what's new, and what's new can be diversity in comics, and not talking about LGBT diversity. That's another conversation, and I'll probably get into that. But I'm talking about racial diversity, the one that you can see, you don't have to read. You can see like a black person on the cover. You put a LGBT person on the cover, and you have to have them doing something to let you know that they're a member of the community. Whereas you put a black person on there, you already know. You know what I'm saying? You put an Asian, you put a Arab, Middle Eastern, Indian, you're going to see it, because they look different, right? So this month we have 2 comics that came out. God, I forgot the name of it. The Last of Us. I really don't know. That's the name. Sheesh. And Land of the Living Gods. Now, I'm going to give you a little synopsis on them because it's important because of what I'm going to say. So, Land of the Living Gods is post-apocalyptic South Africa. And it's written by somebody that's definitely South African or very familiar with South Africa. Either way, they're an African person. And I didn't look up the author. I think he's South African. I think he's South African and moved to California. He's South African, and somewhere it's published by Aftershocks Comics. And it's really cool. I like it. It definitely has the feel of, what's the author's name that wrote Binti? But it has the feel of African science fiction. And when I say African science fiction, it infuses the African language, it infuses African foods, actually. There's foods in there. Medicine is in there, African medicine, which is really just natural medicine, but using African names to describe the plants and stuff that they're using. African spirituality is definitely in there. And it's post-apocalyptic. So that's cool. Now, The Last of Us, I'm going to say Last of Us. I don't think that's the name of it. I'll correct it and post it in the link when the description of the video when I put it up. But this book is out of California, and this one is published by Image, and it's also an African writer, and I think he's from West Africa, and I think he lives in the United States. Land of the Living Gods, that writer may still live in Africa, okay? And he might have submitted it to Aftershock, okay? Now, The Last of Us, I'm going to say that, oh God, I think it's the wrong name, is by a West African writer writing in a futuristic, which could be considered cyber funk, or if they resist the African American element, cyberpunk, or whatever. Takes place on another planet and in a populated Earth solar system. So this writer wrote a comic book about Jupiter previous to this one, and I think it may be the same universe. But it's cyber funk, or it's like Blade Runner, right? And it reminds me of Arcane, the anime one, where I don't know, it's only the first issue, so it does remind me a lot of Arcane. It reminded me of Children of Blood and Bone. Again, like the Land of the Living Gods, it infuses some African spirituality, it infuses African language in it, and that's really cool. However, so both of them are cool. Now, here's the big however, the big finish, right? I'm fearful, right? The one he reminds me of is Indy Okafor, right? Who wrote Bendy. So I'm fearful, or just cautioned, because I'm looking at the publishing companies, right? Aftershock is a Florida company. And I think both Aftershock, or more specifically Aftershock, are trying to tap into the growing diversity trend, right? And I think that's amazing, and it's good. I think Image has always been aware of trends, and I think they are also capitalizing on this trend. Now, amidst the trend, there aren't too many African American writers producing these books, right? And that's where I want to jump in. I can only hypothesize about why I think this is happening. One, I do think, let's deal with the elephant in the room. I'm not going to deny the sad puppies residue in publishers, in the sense that, they resist diversity, and sometimes in the resisting of diversity, the reasons for the resisting are revealed. And I think a lot of times these white American gatekeepers, specifically in novels, I don't know about it in comic books, but Comics Gate is real too, right? Resist black American writers for the fear that they'll write a spook who sat by the door, right? They'll kill white people in their stories. And Land of the Living God and I keep saying The Last of Us is they don't even have white people in their stories. You know what I'm saying? Whether they don't even feel the need to fully diversify, because the stories take place in Africa, and neither books have significant white people in there. I think the West African one has, but I didn't feel the presence. Whereas in African American books, you sort of do. Now, in my book, Planet Keebalon, I don't have many humans, right? So you don't have to have anything, because I'm taking place on another planet. And right now, the human characters are all black, right? But you didn't meet a lot of them. And you're not going to meet a lot in the full series, because again, it's on another planet and I'm dealing with different species. But I think that's interesting, so I don't know. And the second thing is, maybe they're just African writers are maybe just easier to work with, because they don't have a legacy of rejection that black American writers have felt. I'm new to the comic game, but I'm not new to the submission game. And when you talk to writers like Stephen Barnes, they got lists of piles of rejection letters. Good book, but it's not right for our audience. Could you change this character white? My cousin, right, David Anthony Durham, he might have gone along with it, but shoot, his whole book is about black people, and is one of the few fantasy books without a character on the cover. N.K. Jemisin, she had her book early books, her fantasy, big, beautiful series. No person on the cover because the characters are black. So I don't know if African writers have felt that pushback. You understand? I didn't feel it because I wasn't submitting enough to be rejected. I didn't even get, it's hard to get even close to a publisher to get rejected. So Stephen Barnes and the rest of them, they were, published writers, right? So they were able to get rejected. I haven't even gotten close to get rejected by a major publisher. But it doesn't mean that it's not real, and it's not that I don't hear the stories, and maybe the first wave of rejection is not even being able to find an agent. And agents know what the editors are looking for, so they don't take you unless they think they can get you a publishing deal. In comic books, man, there aren't too many black writers in general, right? And a lot of them write, existing characters, so they don't bring their own characters with them. My friend writers, who I've read his books, I'm reading his book that he has in Walmart now on Bass Reeves, Kevin Grievous, who wrote Underworld. He talks about that directly, and I'm over time, so I will leave it with Kevin. But I posted the link on my Monster Panel page on Facebook. When I post this video, I'll post a link to his article, but he talks about how the DCs and the Marvels are not looking for new black characters. They love to bring in black writers to write a Spider-Man and to write Captain America or Falcon, or Luke Cage, but, a new Luke Cage, you understand? No, they're not bringing in these new characters. And I get it, they do need writers for Blade and all these other ones because we make it more authentic, but at the end of the day, hire us and bring in the damn new writers. The new writers for new characters. I'm down. I submitted a banging script for the Milestone competition for Rocket and Icon. But anyway, I'm over time. I'm expressing too much. Oh my God. But if I said something that makes sense to you, or you want to respond to, or if I said something wrong, right, hit me up. But shout out to Image, shout out to Aftershock, and let's get some African American creators up in there. All right, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Deuce.